What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Schrager Hour. We are entering week 8 of the NFL season. I cannot believe we are already in week 8. We've got an awesome slate ahead. We're going to hit some of those games in a bit, but we have an awesome guest on this episode. It's Jon McVay. We're going to bring him on shortly. I cannot wait to speak with him. I cannot wait to hear his thoughts on what his Rams are doing right now. And we're going to go down to story time. He gave me a solid hour of his day, and it's a busy day. But he's like, of course, let's do it. Let's go deep. And we're going to. And I'm fired up to bring him on. I am now fresh off a wild few days. Got to Seattle on Saturday, and we had our production meeting with the Seahawks. Then I had a production meeting with the Texans on Sunday, and then called the game as the sideline reporter, did an interview with Sam Darnold at around 1:45 a.m. Eastern, and then had one of the great airport escapes you'll ever hear about. This is where I want to go deep. All right, if you've ever worked in sports TV, you know that the second that game is off the air, there is a flood to the production truss, and then everyone rushes to the airport and tries to make their flights. Now, in the early planning processes of Monday Night Football, I got my schedule and I saw we had this Seattle game that started at 10 p.m. Eastern, but 7 p.m. Pacific. So I text my announcer buddy, Dan Orlovsky, who has certainly done these games before and maybe can give me some guidance. And Dan Orlovsky says, I'm going to book the 10:54 Pacific United flight back to Newark. It's a direct to Newark. You're going to make it in one stop and we're good. I said, Dan, what if the game goes to overtime? Dan, what if there's a lot of penalties called? And Dan says, Schrager, don't worry about it. We'll be done with this thing. It's a 3-hour game. You'll be on at the airport. We'll get some Caribou coffee. We'll get a little Hudson News, have a Charleston Chew. We'll call it a day. I said, I'm not doing that. I said, no. I am going to book the 11:55 flight out of Seattle. That is going to then connect in Minneapolis and then going to wait 2 hours in the Minneapolis airport before dawn and then hop on to a flight to LaGuardia, and I will make my kids' flag football game, and I will not have to even think about this flight during the actual NFL game. Sure enough, the game starts, and it goes on to be maybe one of the longest in real-time regulation football games you'll ever see. 24 different penalties were accepted. There were 4 different turnovers. This game did not end until 10:30 Pacific. Mind you, I have the 11:55 flight. Orlovsky told me he was on a 10:54. There's no way he's making it. I get Sam Darnold at midfield after the game. I'm interviewing Sam Darnold, and in the back of my head, I'm thinking, can we get this interview done a little quicker than usual, Sam? Can we not do the chapter verse on what Jaxon, Smith-Njigba means so I can get to that car and we get to the... Just kidding. I did the interview. It was great. Darnold was awesome, but I'm booking it. I book it. I get to the car, and there's a great production coordinator, guy named Steele Southern. He's like, we got it. We just got to wait for Orlovsky. I'm like, got to wait for Orlovsky? What do you mean got to wait for Orlovsky? We changed Orlovsky's flight from that 10:54 to the 11:55. He's now on your flight. I'm like, great. Dan and I are going to get there. We're going to be fine, but we got to go. 5 minutes go by. 10 minutes go by. Our producer, Jeff Define, wonderful producer, great guy. He comes in, slides in the back seat. He's with me. He's like, all right, what are we doing? What are we waiting for? So we're waiting for Orlovsky because Orlovsky just did his SportsCenter hit. Like, okay, well, we don't. 15 minutes, 16 minutes, 17 minutes. Here comes Dan Orlovsky, tie off, already in a T-shirt, strolling down. What are you doing? He's like, Shrags, we got this. We got this, and I got this. Don't worry, we're good. I look at the producer, Jeff Define. He kind of gives me a shrug. If we miss this flight, not only is there no other flights out of Seattle, but every flight in the morning has been booked. We got to wait another full day in Seattle, and if I'm being honest, I'd rather be in New York than in Seattle. So we're running, but he's got this cool, calm demeanor, and he's like, Shrags, we're good. I'm like, yes, but I heard that the TSA might be on strike because of the government shutdown, and I heard that there might be traffic because there's only overnight flights at this point, and who knows what's coming in from Asia. I don't know anything. Can we go? Steele gets behind the wheel, puts on some Creedence Clearwater, and we start weaving through traffic. We're making it move, all safe, but we're trying to get there. Time's ticking. I'm looking at the watch. I get the thing. Your flight is now boarding. We're not even close to the airport. We get to the airport. We get to the TSA line. It's about 5 deep. Some guy's showing his passport. They're giving him a hard time. I'm coughing in the background. Can we hurry up? We got to go. We get through it, throw my stuff in. I'm running to the gate. Last one to board the plane. Get on. Huge sigh of relief. And I look back. Orlovsky went to get a snack. He went to get a snack. He went to the Hudson News. He went to get a snack. They keep the doors open for him. He's the last one on. I text him, I'm like, Dan, are you sure? He goes, never was in doubt. And that, my friends, is the difference between a guy who has watched sports his entire life and is someone who is a neurotic New Yorker, and then Dan Orlovsky, who is the ultimate cool, calm, collected backup quarterback, then starting quarterback, and now incredible broadcaster who didn't break a sweat while I was a sweaty, shiveled, disgusting mess on that flight back. Oh, and the layover, which I made. And oh, yes, I was there in time for my kids' flag football game. What I learned, though, aside from that amazing firsthand story, is that we have to worry about the Seahawks. I don't necessarily think they're going to the Super Bowl just yet, but that defense was for real. And what I loved about this team is that they've got two guys that we don't talk about in the national media that might be the best at what they do. Let's start with Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Right now, if the season was to end, he would be on pace to have the single greatest receiving yard season in the history of the sport. Jaxon Smith-Njigba is on pace right now to have more receiving yards than Calvin Johnson did in his record-breaking season. And he does it in silence. You don't hear from Jaxon Smith-Njigba. You don't hear people talking about him like he's Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. But what he's doing with all the attention that defenses are giving him is insane. I love speaking with Sam Darnold this week because Sam Darnold says to us, it's like watching someone figure skate. It's so graceful watching him run his routes, and he rounds them out. He's not so deliberate with his jag, and he's smooth as can be. This dude is so good at getting open. I can't even speak to the precision on these routes and how his body looks. As physical a freak as he isn't a 6'4" guy. He isn't, this Calvin Johnson or Randy Moss tall, statuesque player. If you looked at him in a lineup, you'd say, okay, well, that guy doesn't look the part. And yet he is right now the best wide receiver in football. JSN put on such a show with not only Stingley covering him, but Lassiter as well. And one of the Texans' defensive backfields, which is probably the best in the league. And he still ate. He still did what he did. And he still slammed that ball in the goalpost. I came away blown away with how good Jaxon Smith-Njigba is. I also came away blown away by an 11-year veteran named Leonard Williams, who is now all the way up in the Pacific Northwest after years of being in this New York market and maybe is having his best season as a pro. Leonard Williams was blowing things up every single play. And with him, Nwosu and DeMarcus Lawrence, this defense is for real. At the very least, this front seven is a horrifying unit to play. So Seattle, I come away very impressed with them. For years, it was like you didn't want to go play up in Seattle. Then they lost a bunch of games in recent years in that building. It felt alive on Monday night, and that defense was feeding off it. Darnold didn't play great, still got the win, and that is what scares you if you're an NFC opponent. They turned the ball over 4 times. They had a bunch of penalties, and they still won with relative comfort. Seattle Seahawks, eye-opening performance out of them. Every week, I like to give you a NFL winner of the week and a sports media winner of the week. My NFL player of the week, though, was Joe Flacco. What Joe Flacco did was really cool. And Joe Flacco, on a short week, goes in and plays the Steelers, and they must win for the Bengals, so the season's kind of done, and just lights them up. Goes for 300-plus yards, hits Jamar Chase 16 times on 23 carries, and then has this great humility and confidence afterwards as if it was never in doubt. Flacco makes the Bengals an interesting team, not only in the AFC North, but in the AFC. If they can get that offense going without Burrow, until Burrow comes back, they might be a force to be reckoned with, or at the very least, an annoying team to play. They've got the Jets this week. That should be a win. All of a sudden, they'd be 4-4 and right back in the thick of it. Joe Flacco, at 41 years old, is our AFC and NFC player of the week in week 7. Sports media winner of the week, my guys, Chris Fowler, Louis Riddick, and Dan Orlovsky. Why? Because they were on it in one of the coolest moments of that Monday night Seahawks-Texans game. Here it is. You have this interception from Derek Stingley, who's taking it back, and he stiff arms Jaxon Smith-Njigba, so much so that Jaxon Smith-Njigba's helmet pops off. They get to the sidelines, and Smith-Njigba wants to mix it up with Stingley. However, there's about 8 different Houston Texans who are ready to go to brawl with him. As this is all happening, a ref jumps in, a side judge, jumps in and protects JSN. That ref's name was Nate Jones. Take a listen to the call and how our guys in the Monday Night Football booth gave him the love he deserved.
The intercepting team, so the stiff arm. Now you see why Smith-Njigba got worked up. Yet Stingley Jr. knocked his helmet off with a stiff arm. He shoves the TV back, and then he gets run into. Only one penalty called in all of that, and it was on Stingley for the stiff arm.
It's a good job by that official, that referee right there, to protect that player, man. I don't know that official's name, but that is outstanding by him. That's selfish, man. Like, he's giving himself up right there. He's a former NFL player, Nathan Jones.
So let's now do a little deep dive on who Nathan Jones is. This is for all of you who are wondering who is. Nathan Jones played 7 years in the NFL. He goes by Nate Jones. He went to Rutgers, 7th round pick, gets drafted by the Cowboys, plays 7 years in the league, plays not only for the Cowboys, but then the Dolphins, also plays for Belichick, and has a really good NFL career, then gets out of football. And instead of going into coaching, instead of going into broadcasting, Nate Jones decides he wants to be an official. This is a guy who is living a very cool Renaissance life. He also in 2012 pitched a sitcom, had a TV show idea, went down the road with Hollywood for a little bit and producing a sitcom about being an NFL player and what that would mean, and actually had a lot of interest in Hollywood, and then goes to be an official, meets with Troy Vincent. And I think it's really interesting because we always hear about the officials that, hey, these guys are teachers or they're lawyers, and because of their great union, they have the ability to do whatever they want to do Monday to Friday, and then they can just kind of dip in and dip out. But very rarely do you hear a former player being an official and what respect they get from those current players. We put this post on social. SportsCenter collaborated with me on Instagram. There are over 100K likes on us talking about Nate Jones protecting Jaxon Smith-Njigba and why it was so cool that a former player is an NFL official. I know the broadcast boot camp has their thing, and I know coaching is a nice, easy avenue for a lot of these guys because they stay in the locker room. But could you imagine the different dynamic if we had more former players being officials in the NFL? Do you think that these players would be treating them in some of the ways that they do? Do you think the fans would have the same things to say about these officials as we do? And do you think we would have maybe a little different perspective on these guys if they were former players and they did play the game and they go into officiating, as opposed to, hey, I own a law firm or I work at a gardening company during the week? Just a thought. Maybe the NFL should emphasize officiating as a second act, more so than maybe all the different cool opportunities that are out there for these players. So excited for our guest. Cannot wait to get into it. The one thing I want to say about this upcoming week is that we have this Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love matchup, and it's really this Rodgers storyline that everyone's dominating. But I look at Jordan Love. Jordan Love is fascinating to me this week. Jordan Love has a chance to go up against his mentor, which he has openly said is what Aaron Rodgers is, and he has a chance to steal the headlines and do so on the road in a game that is huge for the Packers. I don't get the sense that there's great animosity from the Packers organization or fans for Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think there's that great animosity from Rodgers to the Packers. Time does heal some wounds. Now, granted, he would like to win this game, and I'm sure it would mean a lot to shove it in the face to some of those Packers officials who said we're better off drafting Jordan Love and so on. But I don't know. To me, this could be the Jordan Love game. Here's Jordan Love, who is right on the cusp, but has been on the cusp for years. What if you go into Pittsburgh on national TV and what was supposed to be a coronation of Rodgers against the Packers, and you light it up, and everyone's talking about you on Monday morning? I like to zag when everyone else is zigging. In this case, I'm looking at this Packers-Steelers game, and I'm looking at Jordan Love. That is the storyline of the week for me. Can Jordan Love get it going, and can he steal the moment from his old mentor, Aaron Rodgers? With no further ado, one of the best coaches in the NFL, if not the best coach in the NFL, and he's enjoying the one bye week they get during the regular season, Mr. Jon McVay. Welcome to the Schrager Hour.
I love it. Hey, thanks for inviting me on. I mean, I've been watching the shows, and I'm like, what do I have to do to get an invite? I had to beg you to let me come on here on my bye week.
Well, you know, we had Kevin O'Connell on 2 weeks ago, and I was raving about what a great coach he is, best coach in the league. So I used that same exact intro for you 2 weeks later. And don't be insulted. Hey, that's just what it is.
It's circumstantial, man. You know, a couple weeks ago, you definitely wouldn't be introducing me that way. But you know what? We got a long way to go. But I can agree with that on Kevin. He's a stud.
Yeah, he is. And so are you. And you're in this great spot right now. When you look at what you guys have already overcome as a team over these first few weeks, I look at it as The NFL did you no favors with your schedule. 4 1 o'clock games on the East Coast, meaning 10 a.m. starts for you guys. A Thursday night game and a London game. You don't make any excuses, but to be sitting at 5-2, as much as you'd like to be 7-0, you have to be okay with where you're at this point in the season.
Yeah, I do like it. And I think there's been a lot of things, you learn about people when you go through adversity, Peter. And I've always, and I told you, and we've talked about it, this off season. I like this group, man. It's about the people, and then it's about how do we come together as a collective. But there's a mental toughness, there's a physical toughness, there's a resilience that you believed could be illustrated throughout the journey that the season takes you on. And I'll tell you what, we've had 2 gut-wrenching losses, but I've loved the resolve of our group. And, you could sit there, hey, we could be 7-0. We had some good breaks that I thought in a back-and-forth competitive game against the Colts. It's funny, Dick Vermeil even texted me after our Philly game. He says, things have a way of balancing themselves out. And then the next week, the Colts thing where we had some good breaks versus an excellent football team. But I like this group, man. I think there's a lot of growth still to be had. I think we're continuing to figure out our identities on both sides of the football. I'm hopeful that our kicking game stuff is headed in the right trajectory after, really leaning in and having some unfortunate issues that have cost us. But to be 5-2, we'll take it. And I mean, it is a humbling league, and every single week you just better be ready to bring it. But it makes the bye a little bit more enjoyable coming off, beating Baltimore and then being able to do what we did against the Jags, the way our players performed.
All right, so the league is a copycat league. You did something this week that I think might be the model moving forward. You guys have an East Coast game, and I would imagine you lobbied the league, said if we got to go to London, give us at least an East Coast game. They give you Baltimore. So you get Baltimore, and then instead of going back to LA or instead of flying over on Wednesday, you guys took what seemed to be the last possible flight to London, got on the field, played a football game, kicked ass, got back on the plane and got out of there. What was the thought process? And give us a little insight on the bonding experience maybe it was in Baltimore and what you got to do there, and then the quick in and out of London as opposed to the whole week in the extravaganza.
Yeah. It was like a special ops mission, man. You're just in and out before they even know you were there. But no, you said it. We had done this trip twice before. And even when I came to LA in 2017, the previous year in 16, they had played the Giants, spent the week out there. Wasn't a great experience, wasn't the result they were hunting up. And so each of the previous 2 times we had done it, in 2017, we stayed in Jacksonville, played Jacksonville, flew out on that Thursday. And then in 2019, we played the Falcons, stayed in Atlanta, and then flew out and played the Bengals. Well, what we've learned is, because we're so accustomed to really kicking off in what's 10 a.m. in our head when we're playing those 1 o'clock East Coast games, we said, all right, well, let's do this. Our players have handled this really well. And because we were kicking off at 2:30 in London, it really ended up being a 3.5-hour time difference from the East Coast if you say we're kicking off at 1 o'clock, the way that we looked at it. And so we got all of our game plan in. We had an unbelievable week at Camden Yards. What a cool experience. And hats off to the Orioles for hosting us the way that they did. I'm sure we'll get into that. But our guys, it's like, hey, let's not waste our emotional and mental energy on stuff we can't control. Here's what we're going to do. Everybody makes a big deal about going west to east, all that stuff. No, the team that plays better in the window that you're allotted, they win the football game. Let's not make it a bigger deal than what it is. You get up, you get some sun on your face, you get some caffeine, whatever you need to do. Let's be ready to go for 4 to 6 seconds and reset it about 65 times on offense, on defense, and then about 25 times on special teams. And so guys handled it really well, but it was really our way of saying, hey, this is the same thing we're accustomed to doing. We had done it pretty at a high clip earlier this year. So we stayed in Baltimore, got the whole game plan in, and flew on what would have been, it was a whirlwind, but we flew in on Friday night, got there Saturday morning. You go through a walkthrough. It was eerie, man. You go to Wembley and there's Jags people everywhere. I said, I don't know how comfortable I feel doing a walkthrough. Feel like James Gladstone might have been up in the suites watching us. But, so we didn't really do much. Our players made up some cool trick plays that were fake. And then, I watched, I said, Stafford, why don't you guys make up the coolest thing ever? He makes up this trick play in about 15 seconds that would have taken me about 8 hours to come up with on a Tuesday. I'm thinking, what the hell? How much of a dumbass am I? I'm going to put that in, though. It was a cool play. That thing's coming. You're going to see that in the second half of the season. But guys handled it well. And then I thought really, Reggie, Carter Crutchfield, Brendan Berger. There's so many people behind the scenes and really our players. But I thought it was a cool way to handle it, and ultimately it worked out in our favor. But we basically tried to replicate what we're accustomed to of getting in the day before And, really our players, they just kind of handle it. And I think there's a lot of trust that goes both ways for us to be able to do it the way we did it. And they delivered.
All right, give me the Baltimore deal. So you guys in about April or May reach out to the Orioles, from what I read.
Yeah.
It said, if you guys don't make the ALCS, we'd love to use your baseball field. And then I see footage of like Stafford throwing a nasty curveball off a So what was the experience? Because I'm picturing you going through, I know you probably came in with the history of the Baltimore Orioles, going through Boog Powell, all the way to Cal Ripken, all the way up to Manny Machado.
I know the Iron Man. You know what? I'm a fan of, the consistency over time. Not a huge baseball guy, but here's what I could appreciate. All right. What you could feel is the culture of the baseball atmosphere. They set us up in the clubhouses. We had the defense in one clubhouse, the offense is in another clubhouse. Let us use their weight rooms, but it was just a good vibe. You play 162 games, you better have a relaxed atmosphere and environment that's conducive for guys enjoying coming in. And I thought the guys did that. And then when you get out on the field and you see the way that we had kind of set up two separate fields, you couldn't get a whole full 100 yards the way that we were trying to stand off their dirt. But their grounds crew and the hosts, people were just happy and our players enjoyed it. And then you're kind of looking around and you're appreciative of the magnitude, the setting that it was in. The weather ended up being perfect for us. And then afterwards, you're seeing guys that, Emmanuel Forbes was a big time baseball prospect. Him and Stetson Bennett moving the ball around.
Okay.
Watching Stafford play catcher for Quentin Lake. Stafford, you see, this guy was born to throw something, whether it's a baseball or a football. It just looks effortless the way that the ball comes out. He
threw a nasty curve. That was a real curveball I saw in the video.
Watch his first pitch. When he threw out a first pitch against the Dodgers a couple years ago, you're just like, man, that you can't orchestrate a better one. And then you talk to him about baseball. This guy understands the intricacies of it. And they've got these machines now that can simulate the actual spin, the access, the way. So you say, all right, let me set up Kershaw throwing me a curve. And you got his face superimposed on the screen in the rotation. And I asked Matthew, I said, yeah, Kershaw hates that stuff, man, because these guys are batting against him before with the technology. I'm wondering why we don't have jugs that simulate Stafford's ball the way that it comes out for our guys. But it's a cool thing. It was awesome. And, we got our Wednesday, Thursday, Friday practices in, and I thought there was some organic just chemistry. I've never been a guy that you can fake that. You set up things where guys have to hang out. It's that's got to organically exist. I thought they enjoyed it. It didn't take away from the urgency for our work, but man, there was enjoyment, and it was the perfect timing for that trip. And, hats off to Tony Pastores for being able to work with Darlene, who's working with the Orioles, to be able to kind of facilitate getting that in alignment before, a few months in advance.
I think it's key. So if you're not a daily Rams follower, you do this trip here, but in the off season, you guys all went to Hawaii. And as fun as that might sound, for a lot of guys, it's like, shit, July, I don't want to be, training camp's coming up. Do I need to do another team and yet everyone went to this Hawaii trip too. It seems like this team likes each other, which is huge. And it seems like you guys have a great sense of, all right, we're all in this. We're a family, not just an organization that works here as a job.
No, that's right. And I think, you look at it, whether it's, with Les, Tony, with Kevin, we're into year 9. We've got a lot of turnover for the right reasons. And then we've got other people like the Reggie Scotts of the world, Brendan Berger, Carter Crutchfield, Dan Demetrison, that are in instrumental roles. We've had continuity with our strength coaches, with Justin Lovett. And so they like each other. They do. And we've got a lot of different personalities, Peter, that make up a special collective, but there's still core values and principles that they all can kind of relate to. And man, I've really enjoyed this group. There's been a lot of things that we've kind of gone through already in a short amount of time, but you learn about people, especially when you go through some of the challenging setbacks. And I'm excited. It's nice. I was just telling Veronika, this is the first time in a while that we've gone into a bye with some good momentum. We've had some unique experiences the last couple of years. Even in 21, we had a 3-game losing streak going into the bye.
Yeah,
so it's nice to feel happy with the bye, and it's cool because Jordan's second birthday is on the 24th this Friday, so that'll be pretty special as well.
That's crazy.
I know,
amazing. Happy birthday!
I love that video of Mel yesterday.
That's unbelievable.
I love seeing Mel run around looking like Lamar Jackson. Hey, he's a lot better athlete than his dad. I know that much.
If the listeners and viewers are wondering who Mel is my son, and I send NFL coaches videos of his 8-year-old flag football, and Sean McVay is dumb enough to sit there and watch and click through and give commentary. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it.
You know what? I've watched Mel been doing his thing, whether it's in basketball or running around in class. I think what's cool is the enjoyment that we both have. You know, we're so blessed to do what we do. But the genuine excitement and happiness that we get from watching our kids have positive experiences, you know, as Jordan's growing up and even seeing Mel, I mean, it changes your heart. If it doesn't give you a better perspective on everything, then I don't know what to tell you.
Well, I could tell you, Veronica's posting on Instagram pictures of Jordan over there in London, and he's in the Rams jacket with the Rams foam finger, and it warms my heart. Like, this is so cool, and he's going to be able to see this, and you get to see it through his eyes. It's actually amazing that you've got, you know, such a young family, and they can appreciate it, the rise up for their whole life. You're going to be doing this job.
It really is. It's such a blessing. You know, one of the things that made me the happiest, you know, I didn't see them for a while because, you know, they had gone to DC and then they went out. But where we were at, I'd missed my family. You see them on FaceTime. And I was kind of, when I came out for warm-ups, Jordan saw me. He was across the field and they kind of let him run to me. And I mean, what that does for you. But he gets over there and he's on the sidelines. And man, Veronika is having to hold him back because he wants to go out on the field and play. You know, he doesn't want to sit
Let me get
back.
out there.
He wants to be in on the action just like his dad. And he is loud and talkative. And, you know, it sounds pretty familiar.
The apple does not fall far from the tree. All right. So just some backstory for everybody. I would say you and I have a great history together, and it starts probably with a random email I sent you about 15 years ago. Do you remember this email or no?
Oh yeah, no, I remember because we've talked about it a lot. I think here's what I think is the coolest thing about our relationship is how it's organically grown and it's stayed the same even in the midst of, you know, all the success that you've had, and we've kind of shared our dreams with each other, and our lives have changed. Whether it's the development of our families, it was meeting Veronika, it was a lot of the different things that have been key touch points in our kind of career trajectories. But the one thing that's remained the same is two guys that have an authentic love and appreciation for one another. And I'm very grateful for our friendship. You know, we've talked about it before. There's the good time friends, there's the all-time friends. And I think we know where we stand. We're the all-time friends for each other.
And I love that. And I love you for it. I'll go back. So this is it. So about 15 years ago, I'm sitting there working for Fox Sports 1 and foxsports.com. And I'm literally at, maybe it was the combine the year before. And I walk by a table and it's like Peter King is sitting with, you know, all the coaches who are in their 50s and 60s, Jay Glazer's with Sean Peyton and John Fox. And it clicked on me. And it's like, I need to start creating relationships with these young coaches. So I go through the media guides of all the different teams. And I had heard your name, but I didn't realize you were younger than me. And not by a lot, but a little bit. And I was like, I'm going to send a blind email, something I've never done before, to an NFL coach, literally at sean.mcvay@redskins.com. Like that was the email.
Pretty secretive there.
Pretty secretive, right there in the open. I send you an email and it basically was like 2 sentences. And I've looked at it since. I'm like, hey, you might know my work or appreciate what you're doing. Let's get a drink at the combine. And then we got a drink at the combine. It was you, me, and Jay Gruden, actually. We had a blast, and then we kept in touch. And the rest is history. And here you're on this meteoric rise. And I feel like I've been along the way as a support system, but also as just a fan of yours the whole way through. And the one that I love, and I think you should tell the listeners this, the process of interviewing for the Rams. So you're a 30-year-old coach who not everyone knew. You're at the final steps with the Rams, and you go to dinner with, I believe, Marshall Faulk, Kevin Demoff, who's the president of the team, and I want to say Stan Kroenke, the owner of the team. Can you tell the story of that dinner and how that went down? Because it's one of my favorite Sean McVay stories.
I mean, this is great because, you know, I think the first thing is you get a chance to be, you know, an offensive coordinator. Jay Gruden gives me that opportunity. And then before you know it, you're 27 years old, you know, then you're 28, 29, and then you're in the midst of a playoff run. And we had just lost against the Giants in basically a play-in game. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, Bob Lamont, my agent, does a great job. And you get your name out there for some of these opportunities that open up. And I didn't do a very good job in the game that, you know, you're trying to get a play-in game. We're playing the Giants, and Steve Spagnuolo did a heck of a job with he and Ben McAdoo leading the charge, and they didn't have anything to play for. Their seed was already solidified. So
They were already clinched. They were playing the Packers no matter what.
I know. Yep. So then we lose, and I'm thinking, I'm bummed out because you feel like you let your players down. Well, then the next thing you know, hey, you got a couple teams that want to interview you, and I'm thinking, yeah, right, But so you kind of gather yourself together. You go out to interview with the Rams on a Wednesday. You go to dinner, and I'm thinking to myself, well, shoot, if they're going to be open-minded, let's go swing. Let's go shoot our shot. I got a phenomenal opportunity to be the Redskins offensive coordinator. So worst case scenario, what the hell? So you go out there, you feel good about the rapport. Then you go interview with the 49ers where they fly you up to New York where they were interviewing with a lot of East Coast-based candidates. And I think that interview went so well, it accelerated the process for the Rams a little bit. And so they flew me in the next day on Friday. And based on how the first interview had gone, it was like, all right, man, unless you just shit yourself at this dinner, you're getting offered the Rams job. And so in my mind, you visualize and you play this story out and you're thinking to yourself, okay, hey, have a good dinner with Mr. Kroenke. I'd heard great things about him. Marshall Faulk's coming. I'm like, oh, this will be great. We have a rapport or whatever. So we go to dinner. I'm staying at the Montage right across the street from Spago, Wolfgang Puck's restaurant. And I'm kind of doing a little bit of background. I don't know anything about anything other than football, right? But I'm like, all right, we're going to go out to LA. You're going to see, let's at least have some familiarity. So if the conversation isn't just football, you don't sound like such a vegetable, right? So we go to dinner and things are going great. Marshall and I have a good rapport. I was a huge fan of his. So we're talking ball and you could feel that was a cool connection. I thought, Stan and I had a great rapport. And obviously Kevin and I had already known each other from our days with the Bucks. There was a comfort level and Stan heavily relied on Kevin's basically saying, hey, I think this is the guy, but Stan's going to sign off on it. And they're going to bring Marshall to say, if you're going to hire a 30-year-old head coach, you better make sure that a player that has total command and can really say, can he do this and command the respect of the players? So it's going well right away off the jump, all right? Wolfgang Puck comes up to the table because he's a big Rams fan. He and Mr. Kroenke have a relationship, and I look like I am 15 years old, right? So he says, hey, when are we going to get the new coach?
What are you wearing? Are we wearing like
I'm sharp. I got a nice button down on. I feel like I'm looking dapper, but I look like more like the intern than the guy that's interviewing for the head job. So you could see, it was such an awkward moment where he comes up. He's asking, hey, where's the new head coach? When are we going to get the new coach? And, Stan's kind of, hey, and Kevin, and we're all kind of looking at each other like, maybe it's me, maybe it's not. Surely he's not thinking it's me. So that was a real funny, uncomfortable moment that nobody knew how to really answer. Spago probably rolled his eyes saying, this idiot is who they actually hired. And then the next thing, or Wolfgang Puck ends up probably thinking that. Then the next thing Fergie and Josh Duhamel walk up to the table. And they're big Rams fans, and they're probably thinking, who is this little kid that you guys invited to dinner with? The team president, Marshall Faulk, and the owner of the team. But I'm like, man, this is LA. You got to get this job. So the interview goes great, and I'm thinking to myself, in my mind, the way it goes is, all right, at the end of the dinner. So hey, Sean, you want to be the new head coach of the Rams? He shakes my hand. I give him a hug. Let's go. Well. Now I've come to learn Stan is a very patient man. And he's actually helped me with a lot of these impulsive decisions that I typically make where you say, let me sleep on it. Let me illustrate some patience. It's probably why he's gotten to where he is. So he's got a place over there. So we're walking across the street, and I'm envisioning this, and it doesn't happen at dinner. So I'm like, man, I must be losing it, man. I'm like, I thought, you're a closer, man. You're not closing right here. And so he says, well, when do you head back? And I'm thinking, well, don't you tell me when the hell I head back? He's like, hey, I really enjoyed it. I'm shaking his hand. And then the next thing I get back into my room and I'm thinking to myself, what did you say that you ruined that opportunity? And now I'm having this self-talk. Hey, you got a great job with the Redskins, man. You go back to be the OC, but I had let my mind
You're already going back to Washington.
I'm going them off like, hey, what the hell, man? I mean, you tell me to bring a suit out here. Are you just messing with me? And lo and behold, Stan, he needed to sleep on it, but it went well. They offered me the job the next day. But, man, I was having a lot of internal dialogue, and it was a cool deal. But I always joke with him, people are thinking, what the hell were you doing hiring me at 30 years old? I feel like I'm 85 sometimes, but, man, I'm loving all of it.
I love the idea of Wolfgang Puck being so excited. Who is going to be the next head coach? And you're sitting at the table, and those guys awkwardly sitting on their hands, followed by both Fergie and Josh Duhamel having no idea who you are, also talking about the head coach. It had to be really reassuring at the table.
I'll tell you what's cool, though, too, is like the belief that people had in you before you were even really thinking that way. Like Bruce Allen was a really big mentor of mine. Obviously the influence that I had from the Shanahans and from the Gruden family in general, what Jay Gruden did for my career and the way he looked out for me, I just couldn't be more grateful, especially looking back on it. But I remember Kevin had shared this with me, since they're like, well, he's probably not ready or whatever. And, I remember Kevin shared that Bruce said this. He goes, hey, that's fine. You can wait and say, all right, we'll wait till we think he's ready. And if you do, he'll probably be on a team that they're probably competing against you and you're not going to like it. And I just respect the fact that they took a chance on what they believed in. And I think that made me to want to make them right that much more. You want to do right by everybody, but when you feel like I tell our players and coaches all the time, man, when you mean it, there's 4 powerful words you can say to people. I believe in you. And when you mean it, and that subconsciously communicated that to me by taking a risk and a chance. And it was like, you know what? I want to do everything in my power. I'm in command. I'm out of control of a lot. But with the vibe, the atmosphere, the culture, the way you try to put these players in the right situations, that made you want to work that much harder for them because of the risk and the chance that they took, because it was a big risk. And fortunately, it's gone fairly well. But, that was a really cool experience. I don't think I appreciate what a risk it was until you really are starting to get exposed to understanding.
It was such a big swing.
It was, and it's a blessing, and man, it's amazing. Here we are in our 9th year on the bye.
Yeah. I would go back to that first year. So you get the job, you guys have I want to say it was a Thursday night game against the 49ers, and you guys, it's a shootout. And it was like, you guys win that game, and their quarterback might've been Brian Hoyer. Your quarterback was probably Jared, or was it It was Jared.
Oh yeah.
And he was like,
Jared,
okay. And do you realize, like, all right, there might be something here this year. Like, it might not take 4 years to build. Like, we could do something this year.
I thought that was a special game, and there's, you think about the journey and all the relationships that are built. I think one of the guys that was so instrumental in a lot of the early success we had was Wade Phillips. I thought he was perfect for, me as a young coach to really be able to have such a steady, even-keeled guy. Didn't take himself so seriously. We were really good on defense under his guidance and leadership. But, that was the 3rd game of the year, and we won, and it was a back and forth, a lot of points scored. And I remember, this is like what epitomizes how great Wade was and why people love him. And he just never really, he just had a great way about himself. But we get back in the locker room, and the Niners, they obviously are great offensively under Kyle, but they had struggled in their first 2 games. They hadn't scored a touchdown yet. And, they had a bunch of offensive production, and we go back and forth and win, in a tight game late in an offensive shootout. And I come in the locker room, and I'm congratulating guys, and Wade said, well, we sure kicked their ass. And just, the way that he looked at things, and he didn't take himself too seriously.
He could have been doom and gloom.
Yeah, but he was great. I thought a turning point in our season where you really realized we have a chance to be good was when the next week we went to Dallas to get the 3-1. They were the 1 seed the previous year. Yep. They were rolling, and we had a back and forth game. Zerline hit a bunch of field goals. Gurley caught a big seam that was a real popular play. They kept showing on the highlights, and to get the 3-1 that year, that was big. And similar to that season, we ended up having a tough loss to get to 3-2. Ended up going and beating the Jaguars in kind of a weird game, but found a way to get it done. And then played probably our most complete game against the Cardinals in a 33-0 shutout in London to get to 5-2 over the bye. And it's a very similar trajectory to what we had, this season so far.
Let's fast forward to the playoffs that year. You guys are the story of the league. You're coach of the year. Everyone's riding high. You go to play Atlanta. You're home at the Coliseum, and there's a couple special teams issues. You guys lose. When you look at that now, 9 years later, what would you tell yourself then going into that playoff game that you would know now if you were to talk to a young 30-year-old Sean McVay going into his first wild card game against the Falcons?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I would say, especially in really both of those playoff losses that we had in 17 and 18, there was just repetition is the mother of learning. Experience is a real thing. And and humility is very close, and it's so hard to be able to win in those margins and understand what it really takes. And I think it's just really having an appreciation for learning from your mistakes and trying to put the players in the most successful outcomes. I think in both of those games, I could have done a much better job, whether it's the 17 loss to the Falcons or the 18 loss in the Super Bowl. It was in February of 19, but you get where I'm going. Just learning from, all right, having a better feel in the flow of the game. You might have a preparation or a plan, but are you seeing it live? Are you able to adjust? Are you able to put your players in successful situations? And, and then being able to grow, like growth demands discomfort. We had a really smooth sail in both of those seasons, but that did demand that discomfort is what demanded, for us to be able to grow and for us to stretch ourselves past some of those manageable expectations. And I'm really talking to myself to have better contingency plans for our players. And, I think I would tell them, keep understanding the importance of leaning into the hard times and knowing that that's where the real growth occurs, even if it doesn't feel that way in the meantime.
You've already said I believe in you. Those are 4 words that mean a lot. Repetition is the mother. What was that?
Repetition is the mother of learning. That's a Jon Gruden.
Is that Lil Wayne? That's Jon Gruden. I thought that was Lil Wayne. Okay.
You know what? You know what? Wayne has some good bars that he might spit out some. I mean, he's got some wisdom, but Jon used to say that all the time. And, it's like anything else, whether it's the 10,000 hour rule with the deliberate practice, but the more that you accumulate that intentional and that deliberate work, and you use all those experiences to be able to learn and grow, the better you become. And I think it's a very powerful statement, and I certainly subscribe to it. But, Jon, everything I say, I've stolen from somebody else, whether it's reading books or hearing from other people. And, we're all good thieves, these coaches.
I remember, that's the thing. I think people see you and they see you as this, but like you are a reader, you are a scholar, and every offseason, whether you go away to Europe or you're somewhere, you'll come back and you'll be like, I read this great book and here's a recommendation. One time, I want to say it was Ryan Holiday for a bit. You were really into the Ryan Holiday.
Oh, yeah. His stoic stuff is really good.
It is good. And Stillness is the Key is a special one. I thought that was excellent. The book that really resonated with me, though, is I went back, and this was after I think you guys lost to the Packers in the playoffs, and there was maybe the change from Jared to Stafford. You went back and you read Phil Jackson's book.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting, and that spoke to you, Phil Jackson. How do you reinvent yourself after all these years and be a coach of maybe the same guys in certain cases, but to get the message fresh and to keep on going? I thought your appreciation for the Phil Jackson book was interesting to me.
There's so much wisdom out there, and I'm always trying to learn, whether it's in, similar arenas, different arenas, the 11 rings, or even, the sacred hoops, just Phil. What I respected about Phil was Phil had a commitment to a philosophy. He had a connection with his players, and he had a security to be who he was. And he did it differently. But what he was able to do was he was able to reach players and get people to buy in, because I think a lot of people forget, Michael was this superstar and they had success under Doug Collins, but to get him to buy in, and even though he was still able to have these amazing numbers, but to get him to buy in into understanding, how do we use this triangle offense to be able to facilitate, set other people up? How do we play on both ends of the court? How do we match up with these teams like the Pistons? But really, it was about the culture, the connection, the meditation, the getting guys to really tap into something greater than themselves. And it was transformational. These great coaches, and I think Nick Saban has a bunch of wisdom every week on College Game Day that if you're really listening, you're like, man, he's got some great stuff that you can apply. But there's always opportunities to listen, to learn, and then it allows you to lead a lot better. And that's what we try to consistently do. I'm going to try to read a little bit this by, spend some time with my family, and then be able to get some stuff to work ahead. But, I think there is an element of when you're growing and you're progressing for people that you love and care about with the platform you have, that's a cool thing that you want to take advantage of.
Well, I just think it's cool you went to the basketball side of it. You could have easily read a Lombardi book or, tapped into your network of coaches, whether it be Gruden or Belichick, whoever. But I remember when you first started, you showed me your screensaver. It was John Wooden's Pyramid of Success. So you'll look for just great minds in leadership, which I think is so maybe not everyone does.
No question. And you know what? I got to give Wes Phillips and really, Jason Garrett a ton of credit, because I remember when I was interviewing and you're looking into, all right, what kind of culture do you want to have? Jason Garrett had a bunch of great stuff when he was the Cowboys head coach that Wes Phillips was willing to share with me. And a lot of that was foundationally driven from some of Coach Wooden's stuff. And, and even, Coach Wooden had a tremendous influence on Dick Vermeil, on Bill Walsh. And so a lot of these influences that I didn't really realize, they go back. And, leadership is still leadership, whether you're talking about Tim McVay being a general manager of a television station, whether it's John Wooden leading UCLA basketball, Phil Jackson leading the Lakers and the Bulls, or it's us as football coaches, and so I love learning. I mean, even the stuff that you navigate, it's all people oriented. And this is, how do you deal with people? How do you maximize and help them, reach and realize their highest potential, but have an urgency, but an enjoyment with how they go about it. And, those are things that are worth really fighting for and continuing to learn how you always grow for others.
And I think that was a slogan that was behind you for many years. Urgent, what was it? Urgent enjoyment? Was that what the term was?
Urgent enjoyment, yeah. And you know what? And I think that still is when we're at our best. We talked a lot about that this past week where, hey, there's an urgency where we've got to get our work done, but there's also an enjoyment, where there still is that ability to go cut it loose, have the courage to go swing, not be afraid of the outcomes, but be courageous enough to trust yourself, trust your teammates, and go play with a quieted mind and be what we're about. And I think when we're balancing and threading the needle on, there's that urgency, but man, I'm enjoying it. I think that's when we're at our best. And shoot, the enjoyment part, I got that from Steve Kerr watching the Warriors.
Yeah. There's this thin line with you where it's like you're living in LA, which is Hollywood, and there's a celebrity lifestyle thing. You're also a young, good-looking coach. You're also this great personality. And yet, at the end of the day, if you can't coach football, that's got to be the most important part. How do you toe that line of wanting to lean into the celebrity, wanting to do the fun stuff, wanting to be at Soho, Malibu House, whatever it is, and then also knowing at the end of the day, I got to do my job?
Yeah, I think what's the cool thing is you and I both know this. I'm more of a homebody than I think people would realize. I love spending time with my wife, my family, and I love being able to go do those types of things, but there's a time and a place, and football is really important. I think the best thing is my family and the job that I'm fortunate enough to have, that gives you real purpose. Where you have a platform to be able to help people, you're doing something that you love, but it's really hard. And, how much can you really just stay present, stay grateful, and keep doing hard things? And, during the season, we're fully committed to doing that. And then when I get free time, I'm spending time with my family. From when you were coming out to LA, you come over to the house, we'll watch some ball, but me getting out of the house is few and far between. And I don't ever feel like I'm missing out on stuff. But then in the off season, if there's a game that you want to go to, or, you go enjoy some of the places, it's pretty cool to live in a place that you feel like people travel for vacation on. But in season, we're in the bunker, and I love every bit of it and wouldn't want it any other way.
Totally. One of my favorite Sean McVay celebrity stories comes from the sports world, and it was before the Cowboys playoff game. You guys are playing the Cowboys in a divisional round game on a Saturday night. You got Buck and Aikman on the call. Fox is doing the rare Saturday night. It's in LA. This is the Super Bowl season that you guys had, and you had those two running backs, Gurley and Anderson. You guys were running the ball, and then you get a special visit right before kickoff. Can you tell that story?
Oh, man, I'll tell you what. This was when you're in your second year, and I remember even, being kind of starstruck, and it was awesome to be able to get to know Peyton a little bit. He and Josh Kroenke have a great relationship, and this kind of coincided when Peyton retired, figuring out where do I want to go, and he's got so many different things, and so he came and visited us. So I got to know him a little bit. Veronika always jokes that I would blow her off. I would blow her off for Peyton Manning. I just remember, LeBron and Peyton Manning come in, and they wanted to use the bathroom because the Coliseum, there was some tough stuff, and they come in and they kind of dapping you up, and you're thinking, holy shit, we got to win this one, man. We got some big time people here. This is a great opportunity for us. And that was an electric atmosphere. Our guys came out and delivered in a big way, but you see Peyton and LeBron, and they're kind of dapping you up before the game, and I'm thinking, I didn't even know they know who the hell I am. And that was kind of one of those cool deals. That's the one thing is, man, I'm a fan of this stuff. You're a fan of,
yes,
what you guys do. I'm a fan of other sports. I'm a fan of people that have come before us. And so this is what I love. And I've always just admired the way these guys moved. And, and it was cool because LeBron was helpful in getting Odell to come commit to us in the 21 season. with Maverick.
Is that right?
Carter.
What's that story?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. What's the story there?
Well, I just think, his relationship in the LA deal, he and Maverick Carter have a big influence. And so I think there was some positive things that they were saying that helped facilitate, he was a free agent, people forget. So he chose to come to us. He had a lot of people that wanted his services. And, it was all those things are really cool. That's what's pretty special about being in a big market where there's a lot of, special, influential people that you admire the way they move in a similar space.
Totally. I'm going to name some names and just give me some thoughts on these people that have crossed through your life. Aaron Donald. What does Aaron Donald mean to you?
I think the most special thing about Aaron is obviously, I think as much as everybody gives, what a special player he was, like as special as he was, people will never understand how consistent he was, how competitive, how much he put into it. And I think that's why, people don't understand, well, why did he step away when he did, when he was still playing at a first team all pro level? When you give as much as he gave, he was full, he was complete. The thing that I remember and that I'll always cherish the most, he let me in his life, Peter. I got to see what a special human being this guy is with being raised from a great family and how his parents and his brother and his just family in general have just influenced a guy that has been so successful but remained humble along the journey, never took days off, modeled the way every single day. But this guy is a committed father. He's an amazing husband. He gets so excited in the joy that he has to pour into his family and being able to let me into those things. You really get to see what's the real purpose that drives him and why he was this just unbelievable competitor that brought it every single day, that elevated the spaces that he was in and the people that he was around, but was unrelenting in his approach, but also was this incredible father. He's really smart business-wise. He's got a lot of different things. He wants to be the Rock too, dabbling, but the relationship that we had, the way that he let me into his life, because he's a fairly private person, that means more to me than anything else. And, you almost come to tears when you hear him talk about it too, because I've heard him share a similar deal where it's like, man, we had this special bond because we were able to achieve some really unique things collectively and together in our football journeys, but it was the relationships that were built in the midst of that journeys and understanding that, what really lasts are, those types of things. He's the type of guy, he'll be here, for Jordan's second birthday. Him and his family, because he's got young kids, they were there for the first one, and he's the life of the party. But I just love what he's about. And then I think he always knew what the moment required. Like, it's not by coincidence that when he gets an opportunity to go to another Super Bowl and really in the midst of that journey, that he's making the plays in the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl to seal those games. Like, he just willed those things to happen. He was his best when his best was required. And it is really easy to always reference him and tell the stories about what does it really look like to model the way for a guy that is still so heavily involved. We're going to honor him when we play the Bucs here. I don't know when that is, but at some point later this season. But more than anything, I appreciate the person and the relationship that we were able to form. And that's what this is about. I think that's where I have a healthier perspective on what a blessing coaching is, Peter. But the relationship that we have, but man, as a player, like, he would ruin people. Like, if you didn't slide to him every snap, you would have great players that would just be shell-shocked. Kevin Carberry, who was our offensive line coach, who's doing a hell of a job with the Bucs now, he said he's like the human Crowther. He gives you immediate feedback. If you miss one thing on him, the snap is over. He's the best to ever do it. And I am so fortunate to be around what he was, more importantly as a man. But you talk about competitive stamina. Nobody had better competitive stamina than this guy.
Just to hit the point on Darnold, he wins the Super Bowl, but he does come back. And then I remember you guys lose in the playoffs. And from what I'm remembering from you telling me, he like hugs you and says, "I'm good, I'm content." And like
I knew that. Yeah. You know what's funny is what I thought was the coolest thing that reflects what an elite competitor this guy is, Peter, is so we win the Super Bowl after his 8th season. And I think in his mind, going into his football journey, he had accomplished everything he wanted to accomplish, and he was never about the individual accolades. He didn't care about that at all. He wanted the team awards. He wanted those types of things, and nobody loved winning and seeing the enjoyment of his teammates more than Aaron Donald did. And so we were able to have success. You lose in the Super Bowl in 18, but then you win it in 8 years. in his 8th year. And I think in his mind, he always saw him playing 8 years, never was a guy that wanted to be a lifer because of what he put into it, made the money to be able to take care of his family and parlay that into some of the business ops. So I had to convince him to come back. Well, we come back for the 22 season, and that was what a humbling experience that was. He ended up getting hurt and decides to come back for 23. Well, I had to sit down with him and tell him all these changes we're going to make, all these great players that we're going to have to part ways with because of some of the financial situations that we were in, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And I watched him say, hey, as long as they care and as long as they're made of the right stuff, I'll ride with them. And watching the way he elevated that group on the defensive side of the ball and watching the way that he poured into his teammates. And, and then it coincided. We were 3-6 at the bye. We ended up going on a nice little run where we ended up finishing, 10-7 that year. The only loss that we ended up having was against a Baltimore team where we went toe to toe and they returned a punt, to be able to end the game in overtime. But it was watching the way that he just took everything in. When you're around somebody that you can tell they're just cherishing moments, they're taking experiences in. And I watched him throughout that year. And I just said, he had never said a word to me about it. But as soon as I hugged him when he was coming in the locker room after the Detroit game, I said, that's it, huh? He goes, yeah, that's it. And we just kind of knew. I didn't need to ask him. I knew. I think a lot of people might have been surprised, but I think that's a credit to the relationship that we had, the way we paid attention to each other. And I think the coolest thing he said to me the next day when I met with him in my office, when you're kind of having the exit meetings and your final team meeting, he said, what's great is I'm full, I'm complete. And it coincided with being able to have, his more time with his family, everything he's put into it. And I think when you put everything into what he's done, and then you're parlaying that into a chance to really be able to be around your kids more and do some of the things that he's wanted to do in the next kind of chapter of his life and, be around Erica more for their marriage. It was really cool. And that's why when people are like, oh, you want to convince him back, it's almost disrespectful to even entertain that. Because you don't know what this guy put into it. But to be able to say, like, what a cool thing to say, I'm full, I'm complete. And man, is that true.
And to mean it, to walk away.
And you can feel like, and that's the thing that I think is really cool is when you talk to him, he's like, I love football and it gave me so much. Do I miss it? No, I don't miss it. Like he doesn't, he shared, but I think when you're able to absorb and just soak in every single moment. And I think the thing we talk about to our team all the time, Peter, that Aaron can really just rest his head on the pillow at night, being comfortable with himself as a man, or when he looks himself in the mirror, no regrets. It's like, I don't care whether we win or lose, but let's have the courage to go for it. Pour everything into it that you've got, leave nothing, leave no stone unturned, and let's go commit to the best of our ability every single snap, regardless of the circumstances. And this guy did that, and he can live with no regrets. And that's why somebody can say I'm complete and I'm full when you're still at the height of your career.
I love it. I love it. I remember being in the combine with you, and you used to have a room in one of the hotels, and you'd say, hey, let's just grab lunch in my room. We'd go, we'd sit, we'd shoot the shit. And you told me, I flew out here on Southwest, and you know who ironically was sitting next to me?
That was wild.
And who was that guy? And if you want, and let's go through that story, because I am so proud of that guy too, and I know you are as well.
It's amazing. Yeah, it kind of worked out where Baker was training. He was already going to be the number 1 overall pick. It was kind of decided upon. And so we're flying out in Southwest. We got the A boarding, so we actually sat next to each other. It was myself, Baker Mayfield, and Dr. Neil Elatrosh, in a 3-row right there. And I just remember saying, I said, hey, no, we got our quarterback with Goff. We're obviously not in the mix for you. Let's talk a little ball. And, you just get to know. You talk about a refreshingly secure, mature man that knew who he was, that has really been through some different things, whether that was his college experiences that led him to Oklahoma, winning a Heisman, becoming the number 1 overall pick. But there's a swag, there's a charisma. This guy elevates people around him. And then, getting an opportunity a few years later in what was a really challenging year to come in and really elevate and make that month, which was really special, a cool thing. And then watching him go do what he's done in Tampa. I still keep it. I have a lot of love for Baker, and I'll always have a gratitude for what he's done for me. But that experience of just getting to know him before he's even gone through any of the things that he's entailed in his NFL journey, I'm not surprised, because of this guy checks the boxes and all the things that you're looking for with how he's mentally wired. And I think the more you do this, the more you realize the importance of the above the neck wiring. And this guy's a special dude. And it's awesome to see him do his thing.
So he's riding high right now. There's a guy that I would like to ask you about because you introduced me to him many, many years ago at one of those Bob Lamont Combine dinners. Mike McDaniel's going through it. Give a good Mike McDaniel story about when you guys started working and why you think, in the end of the day, Mike McDaniel's going to be just fine as an offensive coach in this league.
Well, first of all, he's so smart. It's one of those deals that I remember getting around Mike and getting a chance to work. And I had always heard about Mike. Mike and I coached in the UFL at the same time. He was coaching for another team, but I remember hearing about this really young, sharp coach that had been, working with Kyle. And then when he came on our staff in Washington, this guy had ownership of all 22. I think the cool thing about that staff that we had, whether it was Mike, whether it's Raheem, Matt LaFleur, Kyle, all the different coaches that we've had that have gone on to do some stuff, we positively pushed each other. Mike coming in and his ownership of all things run and pass game, challenged and inspired me to want to learn a little bit more. And I think we positively pushed one another, but I think the consistency of which he worked, the wit, he's always been the same, just cracking jokes. And, you talk about Baker being refreshingly secure in himself. Mike knows who he is, who he wants to be. He's a really good coach, incredibly innovative. He is so much smarter than me. He'll say some stuff every now and then, and I'm thinking, man, I am really, this guy is, this is Yale and this is, me being
Yale,
an idiot,
this is the Ivy.
And so, yeah, but I think what I appreciate about Mike is the consistency. And even just, you go through some challenging things and he's come out on the right end. And I think these are small adversities considering some of the stuff that he's overcome, that he's very, open about, that I respect a ton. And you're always rooting for these guys, and unless it affects the Rams, you're always rooting for your buddies to do well. And it's amazing what a blessing it is when you step back and you look at all these relationships that we've had and you realize it's such a small circle. My grandpa got me opportunities that I never deserved, but the small circle and what a blessing it is to be involved in this NFL. Mike McDaniel's a really good coach, incredibly smart, and consistent in who he is. And I think that resonates with people.
I love it. And the other guy I would ask you about is the one you mentioned early on and how you take so much from him. Jon Gruden is such an important piece to so many of you guys around the league, but I feel like no one more than you. What did Gruden mean to you working for him all those years back? And now the relationship is, generations strong, going back to your father and him.
Yeah, the thing I would say is that Gruden family's done so much for me, Peter. What I learned from Jon when I got this exposure, I got on right away, where I was basically like a secretary, and I remember thinking this was really poor emotional awareness on my part. I remember thinking, he's notorious for getting in really early, that 3:17 alarm, and he's there at 3:30, and that's when he's firing, and he likes to I appreciate now as a head coach, that's when you can get a lot of stuff done before a lot of the unforeseen things come across your desk. And I was a secretary at the time. And so I remember thinking, well, you know what? Maybe I'll try to beat him in one time. And it's like, I don't know really why. It was like, a stupid ass, like teacher's pet type of move. That was not a good idea. That pissed him off more than it was. So I'm like in this desk, right outside of his office. And I'm there at like 3 a.m. one time. And I'm just waiting. My job was to wait until somebody told you to do something, and then you do it with a little bit of an urgency and a smile on your face. And so I think it pissed him off, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's not a good idea. What are you doing? But this guy's capacity for the game, the amount of work he would do, he taught me to see the game through an all-22 lens. And then after that season that I worked for him, Peter, where I really learned everything was at that FFCA. Me and Jay Gruden would go over at the Tampa Bay, the facilities that the Lightning and the Tampa Bay Storm played at, and they'd bring coaches through, but he would challenge you. It was like you're doing an interview every day. I remember I get up there and he's like, hey, teach me 96 power. I get up there and I'm drawing the squares, the circle. He's like, those are the shittiest circles I've ever seen in my freaking life. And just buries me.
Take some pride in your circles.
So you know what I did though? I went and bought a whiteboard at the Walmart, and I put it in my office at the little condo that I had in Tampa, and I'd practice drawing circles, and you'd practice presenting. If my neighbors probably thought I was nuts because I'm talking out loud, you're practicing your presentations, and
They thought you were a serial killer.
That's exactly right. But man, what he did, he challenged, he pushed, he shared. And what I learned in that 6-month period, I'm forever indebted to Jon. And my relationship with that family, got me opportunities along with, my grandfather, Jon McVay, and Jim McVay Sr. or Jim Gruden Sr. worked together at Indiana with the Niners, so there's a lot of family connections. And he didn't want to let the family down. He wanted to do right by the ops that, whether it was the McVay family or the Gruden family. And Jon was instrumental. He challenged you, he pushed you. He's a great coach, and he really taught me the foundation of what I know about this game. And then what I learned from Jay and the way he protected me and helped grow me into learning how to call plays and his feel for the flow of the game and his just natural instincts for the game and the right time to dial up certain things. That family has been unbelievable to me. And, I loved the experience I had learning from Jon, and I really cherished the opportunity to work under Jay and how close our relationship was, because that meant a lot. Jay's a damn special coach.
We had Kevin O'Connell on earlier on this show, and he spent a good 5 minutes talking about how Jay Gruden's the most underappreciated coach of this era.
I think so. Because I think he's definitely one of them that doesn't get the credit, because I think, I love Kevin O'Connell, and the 2 years that we had together, the way that we were able to play off of one another, learn from each other, and watching the way he's doing his thing with the Vikings. He's one of my closest friends, but hey, who did we learn from and who was an instrumental part in teaching us? It was Jay Gruden. And you look at Kevin's the reigning coach of the year, what he's done with that place. And you talk about like a culture and a vibe that you can feel with the way that he leads. I love that guy so much. And I love Jay for what he taught us and how he helped, shape us and put us in positions to be able to handle, the challenging times and the good ones. And I think the other thing was the security that Jay had to empower us, where really he was secure enough to protect you, but to also lift you up in some of the good times and then give you an opportunity to learn how to call plays, but shield you from some of the criticism that you can have. Like, I can't speak enough about just what he did for me behind the scenes. As you're a 27-year-old offensive coordinator, he lets you start calling plays at the age of 28, but he protected you. He helped you grow, and he always subconsciously communicated, I believe in you, but was challenging in the midst of it. And Jay just means so much, Peter. He taught me, he ended up protecting me. He ended up really having the security to be able to challenge you, but also subconsciously communicate, I believe in you. I love him, and he was instrumental in a lot of the things that, we're doing with the Vikings and Rams. For myself and Kevin, we talk about Jay all the time.
I love that. You've got this great little tree now, and it's growing and it's growing and it's growing. I did, Seahawks Texans, and I'm sitting there and there's Nick Caley, and he's spending 10 minutes on what you meant to him. And I have to think now it's almost like paying it forward. There are so many of these young coaches around the league that are coming from the McVay tree, quote unquote. Do you take pride in seeing all these guys have success? And has it hit you that you already have a whole legion of guys that look to you as that dude?
Yeah, I think the way I look at it, and this, is we work together. We're working with each other. We're learning from each other. I just so happen to be fortunate enough to be in the role of head coach, but that doesn't mean, that's just a title. We lead collectively, and we work together. We work for one another, not for each other. And so I've learned from these guys. But yeah, if you say, is there a willingness to share, from the mistakes I've made or from some of the successful outcomes? Am I always trying to learn from others? The answer is yes. And, when you work with people and you spend the amount of time that you do with them, you develop relationships and you love these guys. And so there's an investment in them as human beings. And then you want to see them have success, unless we're playing them, And yeah. That is something that I think it's more of just your friends that have been instrumental in a lot of the good times that we've had with the Rams. You wish them all the best. And I think you're just humbled by the opportunity to continue to get a chance to do this. And you realize how hard it is and how volatile it is with the competitiveness of it. And it seems like it's even more and more difficult. And I think that's why you're seeing the parity of this league, because the margins are thinner than they've ever been.
You're going to dinner with 3 other NFL head coaches. Who are those 3 coaches if you have to fill the table out?
Oh, you can't do that one to me. Here's what I would say. I'd ask you that question. Who you
Okay.
take?
I'd probably.
Hey, I
Well,
know this.
we
I
have
want
different.
Peter Schrager at the table, and I already have to be there. So you don't have to I don't have to guilt trip you into saying me. Who are three outside of us two?
Here's who I would want. I would want stories. I would want entertainment, and then I would want like life lessons. So like, I'm going. Sean Payton's at that table with me, and he's just going to tell me stories. I'm going Mike Tomlin because his words might not be as long-winded as Sean, but everything he says out of his mouth, I'm hanging on to every word. And I think that last one, current NFL head coaches, you know what, might surprise some. I would think I'm going Dan Quinn. I'm going DQ. I feel like he's got a lot to offer, and he's got incredible lessons, and the things that he talks about really resonate with me as well.
Those are three men, and I'll tell you what. When you talk, I'll tell you what's great is I love Sean Payton, Mike Tomlin, Dan Quinn. Those are all amazing answers. I got a chance to spend, I've gotten, it's weird because, Sean and I both now have places. I'm always kind of copying Sean. He goes to Chileno Bay. Now we're going to Chileno Bay. He goes to Gaza, Idaho. Now we went to Gaza, Idaho. So I kind of just follow where he goes because he's got all the good vacation spots. But we've gotten a chance to spend some time together. Sean was always great to me when I first got this job. I always respected him from afar as an offensive mind, whatever. But you talk about storytelling. He's got a hat that he wears at Gaza that all his buddies got him there. That's SPST, Sean Payton Story Time. And so, but his stories are unbelievable. I mean, Whit and I were talking about this because Andrew Whitworth was there. We traveled there with his family. And Sean is amazing. Both he and Mike, when we get those coaches deals together, those two guys are holding court, telling amazing stories. They have an amazing amount of wisdom and experiences, but I love listening to Sean.
Give me, this is good. Give us the Mike Tomlin that maybe we don't see on TV or at the podium, because I think Tomlin is incredible off camera, and I don't think everyone knows that guy as well.
Well, he's funny as hell. I mean, the one thing is you can see how damn smart he is. You talk about emotional intelligence and a guy that just has a command for the room with just his voice inflection, but his timing and his awareness. He's a great guy. You see this guy that's so eloquent and articulate, and just like you're like, man, I would follow that guy as a leader when you watch the way he handles himself, whether it's during games or even in his post-game pressers, and he's so articulate and he says things where you're just like, how the hell did he think of that? Excuses are tools of the incompetent, but his timing and his wit, and is just unparalleled. He's got this great contagious laugh too, and his ability to tell stories. I'm not going to say who, but I remember asking him about, some challenging players that he's coached. And I said, oh, hey, how about this guy? You managed them. They went somewhere else. And he said, oh, no. He says, those guys were emotional. And then he gave two names of some other guys. And he said, those two guys, diabolical. So like he's got like, it's just, he's so funny and his timing. And I mean, if you don't like Mike Tomlin, then something's wrong with you. And I feel that way about Sean and Dan Quinn's the same. I mean, you talk about just the belief. Like, how do these teams
nicest
play?
Guy in the world.
I think all three of those guys you mentioned, you watch their teams and you're saying, I want to be a part of that team because they take on the personality of their head coach, whether that's mental toughness, resilience, belief, a connectedness. I mean, that Giants Broncos game was unbelievable the other day. You look at what the Steelers have done under Mike for so many years. You look at what, Dan's done with the Washington and just their belief and their culture. And then you hear Kingsbury talk about him too. That was a cool thing. We both have obviously a special relationship with Cliff, but I think one of the coolest compliments you can give DQ is Cliff will tell you that, that some of the experiences he had, he kind of gets sour on football. A guy like DQ reignited his love for coaching again. That's purposeful, man, because of the way that he is, the vibe that he has. And those are easy guys to root for. I like to have a seat at that table with you three and you, Peter.
It's pretty good. And and in doing that, I left off guys like Raheem Morris, and I left off guys like, Pete Carroll. There's a lot of different names that we did not include there. That
no question.
We're going to wrap with you soon, but some fun ones that aren't necessarily football, but I think are good. Like, I love your relationship with Al Michaels. It's almost like this like Big Brother in LA type deal. And I know, I went to your wedding and Al's there and he's like crying because he's such a proud friend, but also like not father figure, but like older mentor in this little world of Los Angeles. What's Al Michaels mean to you?
Man, Al is such a special human. I really enjoyed listening when Al came on here with you. And Al and I's relationship, really with he and his wife, Linda, Veronika and I would go to dinner and they would, they kind of put our arm around us, and there's a similar trajectory in terms of, like what Linda shared with Veronika in terms of just the requirements of committing to trying to do something that you're passionate about and at a young age, and you're moving around, but you're getting exposure to stuff, and you got hard charging, driven individuals. The stories that Al would share and the wisdom that he has, like, I will tell you this, you've heard the phrase that people have forgotten more than you could ever learn about something. Al Michaels is the first person I've ever come across that I'm like, I understand that. Mm-hmm. When you talk to him about, first of all, his range of just knowledge of different things, it's immaculate. And he's had so many different experiences, not exclusive to the sports world, but this is an incredibly intelligent, interested individual that has an opinion, but an etiquette on all things that you can talk about. But then when you talk about the range of, all right, hey, I've done the baseball, I've done basketball, I've done boxing, I've done hockey, I've done football, and the different personalities and the people that he's come across and his interests. I learned so much, and I enjoy his just zest for life and for learning. And I love Al Michaels. I love Linda, and I love our times. And we go to dinner and it always ends up, you look at your phone, you're like, how have we been here for 6 hours? And so
how's it this late?
Those are special times. And Al's the best at what Al is the greatest to do what he's done, but I'm just impressed with his competitive stamina. We talked about Aaron Donald, but like,
unbelievable.
This guy loves it. He's authentic. He's got incredible timing. And really, like, I've always talked about being interested in that stuff. Way down the line, I couldn't be happier coaching right now, but like this guy's, willingness to share, and like the amount of people that reach out to him to be able to kind of just understand his space. Al Michaels means a lot to me. I truly love him and I cherish our relationship, greatly. And, I consider him a close friend, and I'm really, fortunate for the times that we get to spend with he and Linda when we go to dinner.
Right on that same cue, you got him as play-by-play guy, but how about Troy Aikman? I know you guys have a relationship as well, and I love that you two are friends too.
Yeah, Troy's awesome. And really, I would say a lot of that relationship was developed from, you kind of getting us connected. We obviously have always enjoyed each other in the production meetings. I didn't like him when he was a player because I was always rooting for the Niners growing up with my grandpa, and he'd just break our hearts. That was when I was old enough to know what was going on when they went on those amazing runs. But what a straightforward shooter. What a guy that just is refreshingly, you don't have to wonder what he's thinking. I just enjoy, he's a no nonsense. He's a man's man. And that's what I respect. And I think one of the cool things is our relationship was really developed from, the love that we both had for one person, and that's Peter Schrager.
There you go. Those are my guys. And I love watching that relationship blossom. You know what he means to you and you mean to him. I also, this is a weird one for you, and I don't want you to get too emotional on it because I think it's important to the story of Sean McVay, but we had Sam Darnold in a production meeting on Saturday. It was Texans Seahawks, and I'm talking to Darnold, and he's been through so much, and he's 28 years old, and he's like, can I say something? Like, the truth is, I'm engaged to the love of my life. She makes me full. She makes everything right. We live in a home together that we bought together, and it's like, I'm free. I could do what I got to do. I found my soulmate. Talk about Veronika, your wife, and what she has done for you as a coach, obviously as a father and a husband, but for you as a coach and what made you better professionally based on what she brings in the personal and the home.
Well, I'll tell you what's special about you asking about that is our relationship, means so much. And you were always somebody that, even though we were in different spaces, but a similar arena, that I could confide in. And I met Veronika the night before I came and saw you in New York when, you're getting ready to go into a really important season as the offensive coordinator for Washington. You had the possibilities of this GMFB thing, getting ready to start up. That was, an amazing opportunity that you just slam dunked and alley-ooped and did all the things that just smashed that, opportunity in a great way. But I remember just feeling like there was something different about her. And I don't think it's by coincidence that everything in my life has gotten better since she's been brought into it. And whether it's her patience with me, even I think my mom said something. She said, watching the way that you handle Sean after games, particularly when we don't get the result that we want, I would have been a better mother to him if I had seen how you handle him. And she's such a blessing. She's so sweet, but she's firm. Like I watch her even with Jordan, and it's this amazing, experience and example that she sets as a loving mother, but a firmness of there's going to be discipline. You're gonna do right. You're gonna be a well-mannered, nice little boy. And in a lot of ways, that was kind of the way that she treated me. She inspired me to want to be better for her. She's been patient through all my idiocy and my craziness, but I'm so fortunate, just like what Sam said, and I know you feel the same way too. You show me a great man, I'll show you somebody else that is really leading and keeping them accountable for who they want to be every single day for their family, which really gives you purpose. And Veronika is the biggest blessing. And, the relationship that she has with my parents, the way that she just handles all these things and how she is still so refreshingly, I've used the word secure a lot with people that I admire and have such reverence for. And my wife is so refreshingly secure in who she is and so supportive, but it's not her identity. And I think that's perfect for me and for our marriage. And it's only getting stronger, as we're building on this family. And we got another little maniac that'll be here on December 15th.
Let's go.
I know.
We got a date. When is it? December 15th?
Yeah. We play the Lions. It'll be a great challenge for us. I never get too far ahead. We're just focused on enjoying these couple days, but we'll induce on Sunday night after the Lions game and then go play Thursday against the Seahawks. That'd be a wild week for the McVay family.
That'll be something. That'll be something. I'm happy for you guys. I'm so happy for both of you. I've known Veronika as long as since you met her, and she's always been the same person, which is the coolest thing. And I love what you said. Her identity is not coach's wife. Her identity is I am who I am, and I just happen to be married to an NFL head coach, which I think is so huge.
And it's perfect for us too, and it just works. And I'm glad that you asked about her, because that does it gives you a perspective of, you always are able to be grateful when you're reminded of how lucky you are. And I know you feel the same way.
I do. Let's wrap here with one last question. You mentioned broadcasting in the long-term future. Obviously, there's been opportunities here and there along the way. What keeps you going to keep doing this year after year after year when you know that there are so many other endless opportunities for you that don't necessarily mean putting on the headset and drawing up plays in May and June?
The people, the opportunity to do this and to really, work towards something and help people. Obviously the season represents a journey, but there's relationships built in the midst of that. There's values and principles that are upheld, that are challenged and stressed in the moments that you don't necessarily get the outcome that you want. It's the relationships with these players, these coaches. It's the opportunity to lead and to really, to try to be the person you want to be for others and the platform it provides. And I think that having a family has given me a much better perspective, being able to see Jordan on the sidelines of those games. And hey, if he doesn't like football, great if he does. But this game has given me so much. And I think, and I'm still so young, I just think there's a much healthier approach to this. We've talked about, what a great influence, my family and my close friends, but a guy like Chris Peterson has been on to kind of just reshape and reimagine, what does it really look like to be transformational, not transactional, and to know that while all these things are blessings, what really defines who you want to be as a man and the impact that you want to have on the people you love and care about. And coaching does that. I love this. I think that, the challenging moments, it's a beautiful torment. But it always is challenging and it's always worth it. And even in the moments that are hard, you look back and you're saying, I don't know where I would be without those tougher moments. And that's what coaching provides. And so I'll tell you what, I always joked, I won't be a lifer. I know this, I couldn't be happier coaching and working with the people that I'm working with. And what I'm not going to try to do is get ahead of myself. And, when we talk about all the time, let's be present, let's be grateful, let's keep doing hard things. I'm being present, but I'm loving the opportunity. And I think there's a lot more gratitude and appreciation and perspective that's healthier on, why you do this in the first place. And I think there was moments when it's been in alignment, but I think I'm more consistently being that person for others, even though I certainly have my moments that I'm not proud of.
I hear you. Lil Wayne referenced you in a rap song
That was
last
sick.
year. Did you know that was coming? Was that a complete?
Oh man, I'll tell you what. There's a lot of really cool moments. That was about as you start getting some credibility with your players. I'm LA, bombs away, baby. I loved it. That was cool. So, and I've always been a fan of Lil Wayne, and for him to reference, and Puka and I were talking about that the other day because he referenced Puka in one of his other songs, and the Carter is a favorite on repeat in my on my phone right now.
I love that, man. I love that. Okay, let's wrap here. That was so good. I appreciate you taking a full hour of your time. I could do this honestly. We could do it weekly like we did a couple of years back.
That was fun. You know what? That never
take...
seemed like work. That never seemed like work, and
you're so
good at this. That was a fun journey, man. But the Schrager Hour is, hey, you deserve to be a standalone host.
Thank you. It's time. Let's go. One of the great things you told me, though, that totally readjusted a lot of the way I look at my career, and I give you credit at this, and it might have been a Teddy Roosevelt quote, but you said it to me when I was going through contract stuff last couple years, and I was frustrated with NFL Network. You said, what? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah, I think that's Jon Gruden.
Dude, that is a powerful quote.
And it's, it's amazing how easy it is to say all these things and how hard it is to apply. But what I think is really cool is the belief and how, hard you work and how good you are at what you do. But to see all the success and the journey that you're on, it's why everybody loves you, man. And I'm so happy for you. And I was grateful that it timed up for me to be able to come on here because I'm jealous of all these other guests. And I'm thinking, man, what do I have to do to guilt trip you into invite me on here?
No, it's funny. It's always that ask of like, do I ask Sean? Do I ask Sean? Do I ask Sean? I got you in a good moment after a win in London. I think it was 3 minutes off the field. I texted you and said, will you come on this week?
Hey, the great friends know the right time too. Timing is everything.
It's everything. Congrats on everything. Congrats on the amazing family you have, and congrats on the great start to the season. I always rooting for you and always so happy to see you smiling, even in midseason when I know sometimes it could be some dark times.
Oh man, it is, but it's all worth it. I love you, man. I'm happy for you, and I appreciate you having me on.
You're the best, Sean McVay, for the Schrager Hour. Thank you, sir. And that's why we're doing this show. This is different. We can't do that in a Get Up segment with Sean McVay. We can't do that on NFL Live with Sean McVay. Hell, I don't know if any other podcast is going to have the openness and the candor that you just got from McVay. Things that obviously stand out, the path he took, and what Gruden meant to him. I thought that was really cool. The idea of Sean McVay on a whiteboard at home in a small one-bedroom condo in Tampa drawing circles over and over again so that he could impress Jon Gruden. And then this great sense of reflection from such a young guy. The fact that he can, look at the relationship with Aaron Donald the way he does. The fact that he can look at his family and what that means to be married to Veronika and what that is. And gosh, for a guy his age, now welcoming a second child in December, congratulations to him. To have such perspective and to kind of have a full view of things. It's really inspiring. As you can see, obviously he and I are friendly. I don't think I show great bias towards the Rams. I don't think I show great bias towards Sean when we start talking. Like, I don't get super, it's just, he's an important person in my life. He's been very good to me. We are very close. And for him to be doing this show meant a lot. And I do always wish him well. And he's got that Super Bowl championship, and who knows what's in the future for him. Sounds like he's a coach though. I don't know, part of me wishes he was doing this with us, and maybe in the future he will, but at the meantime, he can do a little bit, he can dabble, and that's what he did on the Schrager Hour today. As always, thank you to the fine production staff behind the scenes. Thank you for the listeners and the viewers who are watching. Thank you to our music man, Mr. DJ Leverage, and then most importantly, thanks for giving us a forum to do this. This is really cool. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope these go onto YouTube, and this could be clicked for years to come because I think McVay offered some real pearls of wisdom. Till next week, enjoy week 8. This is the Schrager Hour.